What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And today we're here with day 4 of Grand Party, and we're heading into this first match here. And I did see that there was a waifu leader. Now, I understand why people are opting to do that, but you know, when I see that, it definitely puts me in a bit of a favorable position because you don't get Roger's Burst, but I do, right? Roger's Burst is just so broken. We've talked about it extensively in various videos in regards to Grand Party in the past. But let's see how we get it done. Now, I really should have swapped out this team. Instead of just using this int team, I should have switched it out for the quick team, the quick driven team. I think I would have had a much more successful matchup because it did get quite close towards the end here. And you'll see that, you know, due to the way that this game is played, I think I did actually have to use my Roger Burst in this game just to secure the victory. Because the waifu, because I did look at it before I actually started the match, the way that they actually get their GP burst to activate is whenever they're inflicted with a status, and I think you have to inflict them with a status like 10 times or something like that, and half stats does count as a status effect. So it means anytime you inflict some sort of status, whether it be paralysis, you know, damage over time, I believe would probably count, and also half stats, which is the biggest one, it will count towards their special. So you see this, they get their special up very quickly, and what the special does, it really favors into going up against quick and dex teams, because it does action bind against quick and dex characters, so we don't really have to worry about that. But what it does is it actually does like a bunch of damage to characters that have low CT. So it basically will enable your opponent to do lots of damage against us, and especially when the opponent has so many health cutting effects. At this point here, I was actually kind of stressed, and I thought I was actually going to lose this game, especially when the opponent has King on the bench that needs to come in. So it was a very, very scary little situation that we had here. I did opt to use the Roger Burst just to secure a victory because I wasn't super confident heading into the second game. But you'll end up seeing here that, you know, the burst from the waifus does knock out the Kid and the Ohm. So we only had 4 characters left now. We did have Dory and Broggy and Smoker off the bench, which are some of the best characters you can have, to be honest, coming off the bench. And then obviously we have our Blackbeard still somehow surviving, which is surprising. But at this point we start, you know, chipping away at the opponent, getting our specials to launch at the right times to get some knockouts. And we do end up getting the victory, which was a very, very close call. But now we move on to the second team. Now, the whole ideology that I had with this one was, okay, I was going to head into the game, and I am not really expecting to win, but if we win, that's awesome. And, you know, if we end up losing this one, we'll have the Roger Burst for game 3. So, it's crazy what happens here, because somehow we actually get the victory, and I don't really know why we actually were able to win this one, because to be honest, when you look at the opposing team and what the seasonal buffs are, we probably shouldn't have won this game. But what I ended up doing is, because I had a feeling that we were just going to lose it, I did end up skipping it. I wanted to actually stay here until the opponent used their burst skill, because if the opponent uses their burst skill and then you go ahead and skip, then that works out better, because if you end up clicking the skip button, the opponent cannot activate their burst skill against you. So if you have that inkling of you wanting to skip, you should probably wait to see if your opponent uses their burst skill first, then click the skip button, so that, you know, if they do use it, then that's fine. But if you want to, like, ensure that, you know, you use your burst and you don't want your opponent to use their burst to give you a better chance, then you should go ahead and use the skip button. So that's something that you could potentially use moving forward into the future to give you a higher chance of securing victory. Moving on into the second game of day 4 should I say, and yeah, this was an interesting one. So I did see there was a dex team at the front. Now I was very, very close to using a strength team, but I decided, you know, this team has been pretty successful that I've come up against, so why not actually try it against the opponent? So we are opting to use this very obscure striker team here. Now, it actually worked pretty well, especially in the first half of this match. I was very impressed with not only how tanky we were, but in terms of what we were doing to the opponent. However, in the second half of the match, of this game, this was really, really scary, and I think I actually ended up using my Roger skill once again just to help us secure victory. But once again, I had the same ideology moving forward, where if we use the Roger burst here, I know that we're probably not going to win the next game because we did see that it is an Uta leader, and we know that Uta is on the second team. So we know it's going to be an int team. I'll go ahead and use my side team against that. We're not favorable in that matchup during this season, so we'll probably get our Roger burst back, and we'll have our Roger burst for game 3. That was the ideology moving into it here. But getting back to the game here, you see that Pell is always going to target Roger Whitebeard because they have the highest attack stat. So they do tank a little bit of damage there from Pell, but you'll see that we're tanking quite well. And the fact that we have characters like Kid, who is able to launch so quickly due to the fact that he is a driven character, so he has increased special CT. But it's also that, you know, we have Tazora, which gives us increased special CT as well. Kanjuro I'm not a really big fan of, but, you know, if you're running a striker team, he's like as good as you get in terms of Rumble Rare recruits, which is pretty unfortunate here. And then, of course, we have Jack for the health cuts, and we're just hoping that the specials of Kid and Roger and Whitebeard can carry our knockouts against the opponent here. So, because we've done so many health cuts and damage, Luffy, when he launches his special, does fully charge one of his character specials, which is super annoying. I hate Super Tandem Luffy. He's really good, don't get me wrong. I love using him, but I hate going against him because he's so oppressive. He just does so much in terms of offense and defense. But then Kid launches his special again, which does get a knockout against the opponent's Kid, so that does reduce their defensive capabilities quite a bit. Doflamingo applying a lot of pressure with his special here, and the opponent does have the bench of Sober Mask, and at this point I was getting kind of scared because Sober Mask does do a lot of damage, knocking out the Kanjuro, bringing in our Don Chinjiao, which I know is not a striker character, but he is just a really nice Rumble Rare recruit to apply some pressure to the opponent with special reverse, but he gets knocked out as soon as Dalton comes in, so I decide to use the burst skill just to get a couple of knockouts because the opponent was at relatively low HP, and then with half stats, 2 versus 6, we pretty much can't lose it from here, especially when Roger Whitebeard secures that very, very clean knockout with his special. Now, as I mentioned, you know, we're up against the opposing int team coming up, and, you know, I had a slight little bit of confidence due to how we kind of performed with the previous matchup. You know, in the previous game of day 4, we were able to secure a victory with our side team, but unfortunately, that does not go in our favor this time around. But, as I said, you know, the fact that we used the Roger Burst so late in the previous match, in the previous game, means that, you know, we only have to take 55,000 damage, and then we'll have the Roger Burst back. Now, in no way was I ever going to launch the Roger Burst during this game. It didn't really make a lot of sense to do that. So, we have 1 Roger Burst remaining. We'll just get, you know, we'll see how the game goes. The opponent does have the Uta Burst, so I was kind of just waiting for the opponent to use their burst skill if it was going to happen, so that what would happen is that we could just go ahead and you know, they can use their burst on us, and then we don't have to worry about the burst on game 3. And remember that Uta launches her burst skill every time, or once we've used enough specials, then it gets fully charged up. The opponent will use it, as they do here, as it gets fully charged up, and then we can go ahead and skip. And, you know, it is what it is. I knew we weren't really favorable in this matchup anyway. It actually did come, you know, down to 47 seconds, so they kind of beat us pretty convincingly, all things considered. But now we are up against an unknown team. So, at this point here, I felt like it was going to be a side team, because that's what Uta boosts. Uta boosts Int, Psi, and Driven. So I felt comfortable, you know, using Int, and the fact that Int has a relatively favorable matchup in a lot of circumstances in this season. So I decided to use this team. You know, I could have been a little bit more risky and ended up using Rogue instead of Blackbeard on our team here, which gives us a more favorable matchup versus the side team. But if for some reason it didn't end up being a side team, then, you know, Rogue probably wouldn't have been that helpful. But you do see that the opponent doesn't have Wano Law, which is another really good thing for us. So once I saw this team without Wano Law, I just knew that we were going to win. We do have the Roger Burst, which I was using it right before they start launching some heavy-hitting specials, mainly looking at Odin and Yamato, because those are the ones you really have to be careful about. So they have half stats, so they're not going to do as much to us. However, when Yamato does launch, they will inflict half stats to us, which means that we will be dealing a lot of damage, or they'll be dealing a lot of damage to us. So it is kind of scary still, all things considered, because things can just go the opponent's way and you just lose. So it can happen, right? But I'll leave you guys with this clip as we absolutely destroy this side team, and we'll pick things up with the final match of the video. Alright, now we move into the final match here, and this is where things get a little dicey, because we do have to go up against an opposing Roger. Now, I don't care what anybody says. There are people out there in the community that say, oh, it's not that bad going against Roger. Those people are dummies, because Roger is insanely threatening to go up against in any scenario. I don't care what you say, even if you have optimal builds, you can just get destroyed by half stats and the opponent launching specials against you. It can happen. It can happen. And I don't care what anybody says, because it is threatening either way you look at it. Anyways, I learned my lesson from the previous one. Even though we did get the win a little bit earlier on in this video, I saw the opponent's strength-focused team, and I decided, you know what, let's just do it. Let's pull the trigger, and we'll just switch it all up to a quick team. And it was a very, very impressive showing. We destroyed this strength team, and I mean, the fact that, you know, all the team on the front line at least is all driven definitely helps out. So they get increased special CT. I'm not really the biggest fan of using Sugar, but when you're using a mono quick team and you are up against a mono strength team, Sugar actually does kind of help out in the front line, just reducing their special CT to essentially nothing, so that they basically can't get a chance to launch their specials. It's pretty impressive, and you see, you know, we're only, 30 seconds in, and the whole team is pretty much gone. They do have their burst skill. I was kind of hoping that they were going to use their burst skill before this match ended, which would have wasted one completely, but unfortunately that does not happen to us at all. So it means that as soon as we start game 2, the opponent is going to use the burst skill. Now that's not actually that big of a deal, because, you know, when the opponent uses the burst skill, the half stats of Roger only last for 20 seconds. And there aren't too many characters that are going to launch their special in the first 20 seconds. So the only real damage you're going to take is from normal attacks, which definitely can still hurt with half stats, and, you know, depending on the opponent's stat level, it can really hurt your team, and it can really put you on the back foot very quickly. So it is bad, but at the end of the day, the opponent isn't launching specials against you, so, you know, you got to take it as it is, right? But at this point here, I had a feeling it was going to be an int team, because it just seems like the optimal choice here, and I was correct. It was actually an int team here with versus Kaido. Surprisingly, you don't see him too often, I would say. He's not a terrible option, but not a favorable option for sure. But this is a really scary team, though, because it does actually have Perona, which you don't see too often. And I don't really know about the structure of my opponent's team here. They have Dory and Broggy on the bench, but they have Broggy as the last character to come in. I feel like Broggy probably would be a bit better, you know, coming in as quick as possible, but it is what it is. It's my opponent's team, not mine. And Perona is an interesting choice because she can provide a little bit of healing. Now, that's something that I haven't really explored using an int-driven focus team, but it's not a terrible option, I guess, when you think about it. Being able to outstall the opponent. I guess if you go against opposing, you know, opposing int teams, that might be the difference between winning and losing, but I'm not really too sure, because if you get inflicted with half stats, it does halve your healing, so I don't know. It's a bit of a weird situation. But either way, the opponent does use their Roger burst skill here once it does get fully charged. And at this point here, I just felt like, yeah, there wasn't really much that I could do here. I think what my ideology was, is I was going to use my burst skill, because if all of my characters die, I'm going to get my Roger burst skill again. So I'll go ahead and use it. We'll see what happens, because I'm not expecting to get 2 Roger bursts in the next game anyway. We do end up losing 0-4. You know, it is what it is. But then we move into the final game, which we do know is going to be a side team. So I have my int team prepped. I believe I did switch it up, so I am using Rogue instead of Blackbeard this time around. Now, even though we have an insanely favorable matchup in this season, and, you know, we have our Roger burst skill, this was a very, very close game. And this is what I'm saying, you know, this is what I'm saying. Side teams, if they get the good RNG, it can just end a game immediately. And, you know, we saw earlier on in this video that I was able to use a side team to beat an int-driven team this season, and the opponent almost did it to us. And if it wasn't for the Roger burst skill, I think we probably would lose this game 100% of the time. If the opponent had their own Roger burst skill, I would have 100% lost this game, no doubt in my mind. But luckily for us, we had one and they didn't, and that's the reason why we won. So yeah, it was a really, really close game, to be honest. And yeah, I don't know, I just don't like this season at all. I don't like Grand Party. I don't know, they need to change something. They need to give us a bit more of a wide variety of characters to use in Grand Party, because at the current point in time, there's only really like 3, maybe 4 at most GP leaders that are actually viable in using. Because currently, you know, Roger, Whitebeard, and Uta, those are the 3 best, to be honest. And if you're not using those characters as your GP leaders, you're pretty much at a disadvantage just from jump. So I really hope that they can either alter the way that Roger's burst is kind of used, like either like limit it to only once per match, I think would probably be the best way to do it, or just reduce the potency of his ability. But either way, that is going to wrap it up from me for day 4. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and I'm wishing you guys the best of luck with your day 5 for Grand Party. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. But if you guys did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Other than that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.